everyone, welcome to Unpublished. I have a very, very special guest for you today, and that is my wife, my co-host, Amy McNee.
Hi, James. Thanks so much for having me on.
My absolute pleasure. It's my podcast now, by the way, so you can move over. But really the purpose of today is that, Amy just released her first fiction book. It's available on Amazon. It'll be available on Book Depository, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, basically everything soon. I'll put the links in the description, especially where it's available already. And I just wanted to talk to her about her book.
Thanks, James. I'm excited.
Great. Well, I guess
It's really over to you. I'm not leading this
it
conversation
is over to me,
at all.
right? So I'm gonna try and be as formal as possible. I'm gonna pretend
great.
I don't know you.
Great.
So you've been on this journey, Amy, for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard because I want to refer to my own personal experience.
You don't have to pretend that you don't know me.
I watched you work on this book.
Yeah.
I have read this book
Yeah.
a couple of times now, actually, I think.
Yeah.
I love it. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Something I love about you as a writer is just how fucking funny you are as well. I think that's something people will be maybe not surprised by, but that's not a side to yourself that I think you show all the time on Inspired to Write. But you're a really fucking funny person.
Thank you, Jamie.
And a funny writer.
Thank you. I really enjoy writing humor in fiction. I mean, I like it in nonfiction too, but I really enjoy writing funny fiction, funny stories. I love characters who are just a bit left of center. I love subverting people's expectations. I really enjoy writing comedy.
Yeah, and I mean, not to say that there aren't serious themes in your book, but just that you never let a serious chapter get in the way of some good humor.
Thank you. I like it.
Which I love. So it's been a long road for you to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
You tried to get this book traditionally published, didn't you?
I did.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about that journey?
Yeah, so I actually finished writing this book probably around 4 years ago, although James, you're much better with the kind of time frames here.
It's good enough.
Okay, cool. I wrote this book, the first draft, during NaNoWriMo of 2017, I believe it was. It was a much quicker process than my other book, which had taken me 6 years to write. And it was just the book just kind of flowed out of me. It was a much quicker process for me to create this baby. And I started submitting it. I was so proud of it. I just thought, wow, this is really a book that I was meant to write. And I was just really resonating with the characters, and I was resonating with the way that I chose to write it. And I submitted it to agents and publishers all over the world. It gathered up a little bit of interest, but all that interest that it did gather up, it faded away. A lot of you who've been on this journey for a long time often tell me that you remember the day that the publisher was going to say yes, but then eventually did say no. Well, actually, they've never said no. They just told me to wait patiently. But yeah, it was a wild ride, and the rejection really took a toll. And I think it took a toll I didn't really fully understand until recently, where I've really started unpacking the pain that comes with being, I felt so unseen. I felt really stupid and embarrassed for believing in something so much, and for nobody else being able to see what I saw.
For me, it was, a real prime example of, I read the book and I just saw how amazing it was, and I just had such a good time reading it. And it was the first time I really realized how bullshit the industry can be, right? Like, I'm looking at this book going, this book should be published. This book is amazing. Like, it's incredible. And obviously people in the industry like it, but there are there end up being all sorts of reasons, like marketing and what's on the books at the moment and things like that get in the way.
Yeah.
And how just cluttered and inefficient the industry can be.
Yeah, they had a big problem with genre, a few of the agents and publishing houses, because I play with genre, and I have continued to play with genre actually in all the books that I've written subsequently. And I don't really intend to stop. So it's a book that's set in 1590. No, that's my next book. It's set in 1534, and it has a modern tone of voice. And fuck people up. They were just like, why do they sound like that? And I was like, it's. There was intention behind it.
What we always talked about when you were writing it was it's a modern translation.
Yeah.
Just like, you don't write a book about ancient Roman Latin. You don't have to write a book about medieval England with all of the same language. I mean, not that you don't make an effort to make sure that you're historically accurate and you have, I mean, it's incredibly well researched. And there's, of course, a lot of the vestige of the lovely language that you hear from medieval people. It's just that, you know, especially Eliza's tone of voice is so relatable to a modern audience.
I mean, what I wanted to do with this book is I wanted to feel close to characters who have lived really far away from us, and to remind us of how similar, and, you know, to remind us of our shared humanity and our shared experience with sex in particular, and sexuality. This is a story about, you know, specifically sexual shame and feeling embarrassed about our bodies and feeling embarrassed about desire. And so much of that really hasn't changed from then until now. And so with the language, Eliza has a really modern tone of voice and a modern way of thinking. And I liked that blending of you know, us and them, but publishers really couldn't get behind that.
It really annoys me often when people can't get their head around this, because, you know, I did a lot of Latin at university because I'm a nerd. And as part of that, we did a Latin comedy module, and we had to translate an old Roman play by an author called Plautus, and it just really, once you translated it, it just read like a slapstick American comedy. Like, it was just dick jokes and just like sex jokes, and it was just, you know, it was so modern.
Yeah.
And you know, that was the play that we translated was the play that ended up being Comedy of Errors by so Shakespeare adapted this play into Comedy of Errors, and then that Comedy of Errors has been adapted in the modern time as well. It's like you just keep adapting these things, and it's like, and also when people are like, oh well, you know, back in medieval England they really didn't talk like that, and it's like, people weren't going around. Like, do you think people were going around in the ancient world or in the medieval world talking like in highfalutin, like that? 99.9% of people weren't like that. Maybe the Queen. Yeah. Even then, behind closed doors, who knows? It's like people just were much more relatable than we think they were.
And that's exactly why I wrote my book.
Yeah.
Like, I did my degree in medieval history, and I studied specifically like sexuality, romance, desire, medieval pornography, medieval sex work. Like, I really have a background in this, and every single time I learned something new, read another primary source, I was like, these people are us. Like, there is just so little that separates us. We are so similar. We do the same shit. We have the same issues. We have the same, you know, egos that talk about the same shit. And I just loved that. And exactly what you said with Plautus, like, we just, you know, in so many ways we have moved so far, but also we just haven't at all. And I think that's incredibly, almost romantic. I love it. And it connects me to history, it connects me to past, and it connects me to my humanity. And so that was what I was trying to do with the style of it. And I love the style. And I've written 2 more historical fiction books since then, and I've kept the style. So if you do end up buying the book and reading it, and I'd be really interested to hear from you. I'm sure people will have issues with it.
I think, you know, if we were to compare it to things, you know, you could compare it to the Catherine the Great series that was out on TV recently, which was super anachronistic. Like, it was very much Russian, but at the same time, I'm trying to remember details from it, but, you know, it was like she would say stuff that was just
so colloquial,
and it was amazing. It was like amazing.
It was so good. When that show came out, I was like, this is exactly the tone that I've written Elizabeth in, and it pissed me off.
Yeah.
I felt so angry. There's been a lot of anger on this journey for me, like real, like rage, like, and so many creatives go through this. It can, you know, when we walk this journey and we so vulnerably share our art, a lot of anger comes up. And for me, I was really angry because I just felt so unseen, and I felt so undervalued, and I felt so embarrassed, and I didn't feel like I deserved to feel that way.
No, not at all. And really, it was because you were outside the box. It's like you weren't fitting into a neat little category, and that caused a lot of your problems, which is crazy. I mean, it's you know, this is art we're talking about. It's art. Like, people love to put art in a box, and it's just so much bigger than the bounds of any genre can be, which is why, you know, we always talk about spelling and grammar and everything, and like how you can play with that, and you don't have to be amazing at those things to be a writer. And I think I mean, your whole personality, Amy, is just not giving a fuck about anything. So it's like, of course you weren't going to write a really stale, boring thou art medieval history book.
I definitely anticipate, especially if the book manages to breach the beautiful community that I have created here, if it manages to get into the hands of more traditional historical fiction readers, we'll definitely get some good reads, interviews that are like, why would they say that? It's like if you go on them, like IMDb, and look at what's the Heath Ledger movie that I love?
Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale is such a great movie.
It's very, your book, I feel like, has some resemblance to that, not in the plot, but in the style.
In the style, yeah. And they amalgamate, like, you know, such modern, incredible music into that movie, which is set in the 1400s, I think. And no, earlier, it's Chaucer. It's like 1200s. And the reviews are like, oh, why would they do it? It doesn't make... We Will Rock You was in the...
Queen wasn't around in the 1200s. Like, yeah, we know. Did you think that they actually thought Queen was around? No, that's not the point. It's a movie.
It's so funny.
And also, it annoys me. I remember, as much as I have loved a lot of my writing tutors in the past, like, I really remember having this conversation with one of my writing tutors where she was like, oh, you know, your character's wearing pants. They could only be wearing a tunic in ancient Rome. And I was like, for starters, I've spent 7 years of my life studying the ancient world, and I can tell you we don't know shit about fuck. You know, as far as we know, okay, fine, maybe there's no, so far we don't have archaeological evidence of someone wearing pants. But we don't know they couldn't have been wearing pants.
Oh my God, I know. We're so high and mighty. Historians can be, like, and people who are interested in history can be very high and mighty about what we did and didn't do. It's like, you don't know.
We've lost 99.9% of the knowledge from that period, from our past, basically.
Yeah, really interesting. Which is actually why, so we got support as we self-published this. We really needed it in terms of just the logistics of it, because we've been, you know, with other creative projects, and also we just wanted support, and we had the means to enroll this beautiful woman named Linda.
Employ?
I don't know, James.
I'm so sorry. I'm just preparing you for people who are nitpicking your language in the book.
That's how I'm going to react to, with huge sighs and side eye. We employed Linda from Book Boffin, who's just been literally the most wonderful, incredible influence and just such an amazing support. But she categorized the genre as romance. So it's in the romance section of Amazon, which I thought was interesting, and it's probably just kind of allowing a bit more space for people to accept that it is a different book and it does genre bend. Yeah,
I think you probably were thinking it more as a pure historical fiction, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's how I wrote it, because I was so entrenched in the history of it. But it is definitely a romance.
I mean, it once again shows the limits of genre.
Exactly. It's so stupid.
I mean, there's a lot of love, a lot of sex in it.
Yeah.
But it's not like a bodice ripper.
No, it's not erotica. There's nowhere near enough sex in it for it to be erotica.
Yeah. But it's it definitely, like, Eliza's relationships, especially sexual and romantic relationships, define her journey so much. I think
definitely do.
That I can definitely see why romance would be its category.
Yeah. And I think maybe romance readers are a little bit more open to the genre bending in itself. Yeah. Which is cool. Romance readers are the bomb. They also buy a shit ton of books. Yeah. And so I'm really about them. Yeah. If you're a romance reader.
Yeah, I guess also, like, to give it another comp title, something like Outlander as well. Yeah. Mind you, you know, she does a really clever job of making, what's the main character's name in Outlander again?
Oh man,
the one who she makes the main character
Catherine?
Travel back in time.
No, that's not right.
Which gives a very it's very easy for a reader then to buy into.
Yes, the different languages.
Yeah, that she's speaking a bit more, or she has attitudes of a modern person a bit more. Not that Eliza has the attitude of a modern person, I would say.
Yeah, who knows? Let's leave it over to the reader to decide. I'll be interested to hear feedback.
Yes.
Sorry, we kind of got a bit off track there about the rejection and the publication. So basically, after I was rejected, I stopped giving my book to publishers. It was too painful. Like, every time I went back to try and do it again, and I did, like, repeatedly, I was like, okay, let's try and resubmit. I just called her Elizabeth then, but now her name is The Rules Upheld by No One. I was like, let's do it again. I could not summon the will to put myself through it again, because not only did I feel rejected, I felt completely ignored, because the submission process to traditional publishing houses, like, I've worked in a publishing house, I know that most of the books don't really get read a lot of the time, or, you know, they might take a year to be read. Like, I felt so inconsequential, and as an Enneagram 4, there's nothing more painful to me than feeling inconsequential. And as a creative, feeling like your work is inconsequential is just so painful, and I couldn't put myself through it again. So for 4 years, she just sat there, a completed book. I had her edited by a professional, an incredible professional, and, like, she was just ready to be seen by the world, but I couldn't bring myself to self-publish, because I had all these stories that self-publishing meant that I'd failed, that self-publishing meant that nobody wanted me, that it was giving in to the fact that the only person who would pick me was myself. And I needed to change those narratives and come to terms with the fact that, you know, even though I had been rejected by many publishers, every single day that went on between then and now was a day where I wasn't picking myself. Like, I was rejecting myself every single day that my book wasn't out in the world. And it was a permission slip for me to say, no, I do choose you, Amy, and I believe this book is going to connect and I believe it's important. And so I finally fucking got around to do it with a lot of little tantrums on the way.
I think it was, I mean, I'm so proud of you because it was a real dark forest moment for you. Like, you really had to go through such a massive personal growth journey to get to this point. Like, I think 4 years ago, it wouldn't have even been conceivable for you. You just were so keen for the gatekeeper's approval 4 years ago, and just seeing the change in you now, and like your attitude of, I can do this myself, your attitude of, I am my own publisher, I back myself. It's just such a transformation. It's incredible.
Thank you.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, and I won't deny I'm still on the journey to this day. There's still a part of my ego that says, oh, but people out there will know. That's what I think. You know, they'll know that nobody wanted you. And I've really got to listen to that story. And as I've said, I was on the Right Now podcast yesterday. I was talking about this to Sarah, like, you know, it's actually harder to pick yourself than it is to make someone pick you. Like, the pain that I've been through for the last 4 years of just learning to choose myself and to know that that's enough has been such a journey, a harder journey than it was begging people to see me. And so when you choose yourself, I just want you to know that that's more profound and more powerful than anyone picking you will ever be.
I also just want to remind everyone out there who's on a journey where they're trying to get noticed by gatekeepers that gatekeepers are just regular people. Like, they're not, we think that they're some kind of genius pickers or they have some kind of supernatural ability to just see the best art, but they don't. They're just normal people.
Yeah.
Like, and in fact, if anything, artists, I think, are often, artists are the vulnerable, amazing, cool, special ones.
Yeah.
Gatekeepers are often maybe people they're in a shadow career, shadow artists. They don't have the guts, or they're not vulnerable enough themselves to create or write or do the art. And they're trying to find another way to build a career in the arts because they're too scared. And then often they're, you know, essentially their job day by day is just to get through their pile of no's as quickly as possible. Yeah. And that's it. Like, they just, my touch point here is that I've marked a lot of university essays. And I used to think that university markers were like these perfect, objective people. And I just realized that, like, I'm just marking these essays being like, 80 out of 100. Like, I'm trying my best. Like, I'm trying my absolute best, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is what a lot of people are like.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes for any creative field that you're in. Like, we're always going to be putting these people up on a pedestal who get the power to choose when really they just happen to be there.
They just got given a job, like any other job, and then their job happens to be that they have like life or death over your art, or choice over your art, you know, or powers over your art. Yeah.
Being pretty negative about gatekeeping. Obviously, it's a very valid path to go down, and I support any of you who are choosing to go down that path. Like, I really do. But for me, the journey was, I had to pick myself. Like, this was just my journey. And, you know, it might not be always my journey. I might choose to go down a traditional publishing route down later in my life. But I had to pick myself first.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's what I mean. Like, I don't think that publishers, or I don't think that gatekeepers are bad people. I just think that we have to just remember that they're regular people.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah.
They don't have like a perfect view of all art, and they don't always get it right.
No, and they often don't even give you a chance.
Exactly, yes. So, well, we've talked a little bit about your creative process, but something that from an outsider's perspective, the difference between you writing your first book, where you wrote your first book before I feel like you've gone on your real creative awakening journey.
Yes.
And you wrote this book after I feel like you've done a lot of inner work, when you started your journaling journey as well. And just seeing the difference in how you created, just like all the lessons you learned from the first book, all the lessons you learned through your journaling practice, I could just see them in how you wrote this book. It was such a easeful process.
It was such an easeful, delightful, wonderful process. The editing process was a little bit more challenging, as it is always for me, because I'm not as keen on the editing process. But especially that first draft, you know, I was doing NaNoWriMo, but I didn't in any way hit the 50,000 word per November thing. I was doing, 500 to a little bit more than that a day. And I was just cruising through it. And it just felt like I trusted myself again. I'd broken a consistent pattern of self-betrayal. I didn't have ridiculous expectations of myself. I was just enjoying it. And the story, I was very lucky. And it actually hasn't happened to me since. The story flowed out of me. The two books that I'm working on, a book now that I call Jack, and I've written a book called Maud, both historical fiction novels. I haven't been given the narrative or the plot like I was gifted the narrative of The Rules Upheld by No One. I feel like the gods were like, here is the story. You can write it now. And I was like, okay. And I just fucking went for it.
I also think like something that really helped that was that you wrote quickly and consistently over obviously not like you wrote consistently over 6 months. Like sometimes when we're gifted these ideas and these things from the muses, we sit on them for too long. I think that's gonna be really dangerous, whereas you just acted straight away.
I did. It had been like like a vague thought of this book had been hovering around my mind for like quite a long time, and I was in a medieval lecture, and they were talking about medieval sex workers and how I can't remember the time frame. It actually didn't end up being quite the right time frame for my book, but they wore red and white striped hoods to be identified by the officials or the like the law enforcement. So sex workers wore these like incredible. They look like night gown hats, and they're so absurd looking, and like it was just such an incredible picture in my mind, and I was obsessed with it. I was like, there's a story there, and that's what I had initially, and then when I gave my full attention to her, the story was just gifted to me.
That has been my experience time and time again. I have a seed of an idea, and then I just start writing notes on it, and then the ones that are going to take and form full novels for me have always been the ones that I just can't stop writing notes on them. Over the series, over the course of a few weeks. Like, I would have been on a dog walk, or I would have been going to the shops or something. I have to just stop, and I have to just write in my Evernote another sentence or two. And these ideas just keep bam, bam, bam. It's like a chain of them, and the more you respond to the chain, the more ideas you get.
Yeah, it's like a child or a dog or something. Like it requires attention, and the more attention you give, the more attention it will give you.
It's like, do you ever start a memory shows something in your brain, you think that's all you remember of it, and then like the more you focus on it, the next bit of the memory comes up, then the next bit of the memory comes, and then the next bit of the memory comes up, and it keeps like slowly, you're not expecting it, but the path keeps filling itself. I feel often the same way with writing.
Yeah, I agree. I've definitely struggled a lot more in the last 2 books in terms of just figuring out the plot, and I'm not as good at you. I'm not as good as you when it comes to ideation. You're a really strong ideator.
I think that I have a stricter planning process than you.
You do.
Where I literally sit down and I treat when I'm in the planning process, I treat that as my 1 page of planning is a 500-word day.
Interesting,
equivalent.
yeah.
So it's like, I feel like you wing it a bit more.
Yeah, I guess I do. I get kind of bored. I want to write.
Yeah, which is totally valid as well.
Although I'm pretty stuck right now with Jack. So
you've been pushing through well though.
With some bullshit. Oh well, first draft's meant to be bad.
Amy and I've been reading each other's books a lot lately and helping each other, and it's just such a fun thing to do.
It's so fun.
It's just so funny, Amy's always like, "Oh, I'm really struggling with Jack. You think it's so stupid when you read it." And I'm like, I'm reading it. I'm going, girl, this is your 4th book. Like, your crap right now is amazing, and that's so awesome. It's like so awesome to see someone who's spent 10 years of their life doing this craft and just seeing what your first drafts are like now compared to what they were in your first book. It's incredible.
Thank you. I really, even though you're my husband, I really hear you and I really believe you, and I'm very grateful for that feedback. I love writing, like getting back into fiction writing consistently. Like I've written now 20,000 words or a bit more of Jack, and I just love it. I love to tell stories. I love to get involved in the voices of these characters. I love to make funny things happen.
Yeah. That's what I was going to talk to you about, is you had a break for about a year there from fiction to write non-fiction, where you wrote, the Journaling Compendium and the We Need Your Art series. Have you, what's the difference, do you feel like, in your process between writing fiction and non-fiction? Do you find it different?
Yeah, it's actually really different. Fiction to me requires a shit ton more consistency because you're dealing with a world that is in your imagination, and touching base with it each day is a huge requirement for me, or at least 5 days a week, so that I'm always with the characters, with the story, understanding the pulse of what's going on. Otherwise, if I leave it too long, I can get really distracted. Whereas nonfiction, I feel like, especially because I'm writing about creativity, and creativity is what I live and breathe, like even when I'm not writing, I feel like I'm living in the world. So it's easy for me to dip in and out of nonfiction.
And you're posting on Instagram every day.
I'm posting on Instagram every day.
So you're kind of
I journal every day. Like,
you have a connection to it all the time.
I do. I feel very connected to nonfiction work all the time, and I feel like I'm often working on it when I'm not like on the page writing. Whereas fiction, I do daydream about it and stuff, but most of the work for me gets done when I'm there on the page with the characters. So in that way, it's very different. I also always prioritize fiction over nonfiction if I've got them both going at the same time, because nonfiction requires less creativity.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I remember,
For me.
do you remember that conversation? I'm just going to throw Henry under the bus here. Our friend Henry, who we're actually going to have on the podcast soon to talk about NFTs. He was like, he's writing his thesis in political science, political philosophy, and he was going, it must be so easy for you guys because if you're stuck, you can just write anything. Like fiction must be so much easier. And I'm like, actually, I always find it harder.
Yeah, I always find it harder too.
It has to make so much sense. Like, if you don't know what you're doing in nonfiction, just do a bit more research.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you have to do. Whereas you can't just do a bit more research for fiction. Like, the plot either works or it doesn't. And all the holes, like, there are constant plot holes in real life. It's like, oh, well, you know, the Prime Minister really didn't act consistently with his character there, and it's a massive plot hole. It's like, no, like, we're just people, we suck. Like, we never act consistently. It's, of course, the Prime Minister's being an idiot because they're a person, and they're not consistent. It's like, oh, well. But in fiction, it's like, oh, well, I don't think your main character would have done that, and then like, that's considered like a huge plot hole. It's like, well, no one ever does what they're supposed to do. So you can't just make stuff up in fiction. You have to do consistent stuff because the standards are so much higher.
Yeah. We require something. We require higher standards for our make-believe worlds.
In nonfiction, discrepancy is interesting, you know?
Yes.
It's like, oh, what was that about? And it's telling us something. Whereas in fiction, it's sloppy.
Yeah. Like, I'm just thinking about, like, today with Gladys Berejiklian's, like, announcement of the new rules for vaccinated people. And then,
remember that half our audience is American.
Okay. Well, you can tune out for a
like
second.
equivalent of our state governor.
Yeah. She just like built us up to have these like special privileges, and then she just like was such, to me it was just like such a moment. And if you'd written about it, all the readers would have been like
Basically she was like, now you can exercise outdoors with 5 people rather than 2. And it was like, she'd been all week being like, there's something very good coming, very, very good at the end of the week. And yeah, you're right, if you'd written that in the story, people would have been like, what? We're an anticlimax.
All week, like, the plot's been driving up, Gladys, every morning. Oh, you know, you're going to get a treat at the end of the week. You're so lucky. And then just, like, you can have some extra people when you're outside. Don't go inside your house. You can't be in your backyard. You'd be like, oh.
Okay.
Bummer. But yeah, so it is interesting. That's personally what I feel. I mean, nonfiction, I think, can take sometimes a little bit more discipline in terms of just getting it done, because if you're not super invested in characters or like, I don't know, you know, it's so interesting. Like, they both ebb and flow. You both need discipline for different reasons, and yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I love to write nonfiction as well. But I agree, it's a very different part of the brain. I always find like the language element of nonfiction easier. Like you're just saying something very directly, whereas fiction you have to just layer in so many different things. Like it's actually so hard. Everyone out there writing fiction, just well done.
Yeah.
It is so hard.
James finished his second book yesterday night.
I did, yeah.
So good.
Thanks. I was struggled so much to get there. Amy ended up sitting me down and going, I'm just going to read it out loud, the last 3 chapters out loud to you tonight, and we're going to finish it. And it was awesome.
I'm so glad. It was really fun.
And I'm just going like, wait, I was going, wait, did I say that? Okay, wait, go back. Okay, no, swap that out for this. And Amy was just like tapping away there. It was really fun.
It was really fun. It was a really great way to do. I think it's a really good way to do a last edit. So you're not too picky and moving things around too much. So someone just reads it to you. Also feel like it gives you a bit of distance having someone read it to you.
Definitely. It was so helpful.
I'm so glad. All right, Boyo, next question.
Okay. I forgot I asked a lot of them already.
Yeah, we've run out.
Yeah, I guess I just, like, as usual, just prepare really poorly.
Shall I speak about what the actual book is about? Shall I synopsis it?
Can you synopsis? I also thought maybe it's an opportunity for you to read the first page out. But I just don't know. Do we have I can go get it if you want to just chat quickly.
Yeah, I'll just bitch about you.
Okay, that's good. Back in a sec.
So The Rules Upheld by No One is historical fiction / romance. It's set in 1530. Oh, fucking hell. You know what? I literally have this date like circled on the front of my notebook with all my historical research because I cannot retain it. It happens in the dissolution of the monastery. So Henry VIII has separated from the Catholic Church and he's shutting down all of the monasteries all over England. And this is a story about... You can't find it, Jamesy?
I'm going. Just give me another second.
Okay, great. I think it might be on the couch.
Okay.
story about Eliza, who is a noble-born woman whose family have run out of money and there's no money left for her dowry. So she has to go and be in a nunnery. That's what she's decided to do. She has a strong faith. This is where she believes she belongs. And we find out along the journey that she believes she belongs there because she is so ashamed of her desires and her lusts, and she thinks if she's enclosed in a nunnery, she will be safe from her libidinousness and her sins, essentially. So she ends up in this nunnery. She flees a relationship with her tutor because she knows it's tempting her too much. But then when the nunneries are dissolved, she ends up on the streets of London and has an interlude with sex work in the brothels of Southwark on the south of the Thames.
Spoiling too much at this stage, if you ask me.
Well, you know what? The blurb spoils everything. And I was like, is this a good blurb? Is this a good blurb? And everyone was like, yes, it's perfect.
I think the thing is, you got to think of Amy, the book is much more episodic than it is plot-driven, if that makes sense. So it's much more about the different episodes in Eliza's life and how she deals with that and overcomes similar challenges and themes. It's more of a thematic, episodic book, in my view.
I agree. All right. This is really cute. This is practice for my Audible recording in a few weeks' time. Chapter 1. It feels like I've pissed myself, moaned Livia. Don't speak like that. The younger sister shouldn't have to reprimand the elder as often as I did, but I couldn't really blame her for the outburst. I could feel drops of sweat between my legs. Why must we sweat? And there, of all places. It was ungodly. We will need to cut your hair before you go, Elizabeth. It's far too long. Agnes, my even elder sister, was walking just in front of me. Maybe they'll shave it for you when you get here. When you get there, suggested Livia. I clutched my long red waves. No, my hair was staying. I was just weeks away from my removal to a nunnery, Laycock Abbey. Removal was not quite the right word. I had chosen to go. It suited mother and father financially, and it suited me spiritually. I was not destined for marriage like Agnes or Olivia. I was for God. It had always been my plan. Mother and father's plan, my plan, and God's plan.
There you go. Maybe we could do a special episode where you read the first chapter.
Yeah, that would be fun.
That would be fun. Thanks, Ames.
That's my pleasure. I'm so grateful for everyone who's been on this journey with me. Like, honestly, it has been a wild ride, and I'm just so grateful wherever you came in on, on this big journey. Some of you have been with me forever, but wherever it is that you've come in to support me, if you've pre-ordered the book or if you intend to, I'm really it's very hard for me to articulate words to really properly tell you how appreciative I am of you, because you're letting me live the dream. You're letting me do what it is that I feel called to do, and I'm super fucking grateful.
Yeah, we're so grateful for all of you in so many ways. Really, you all support us both emotionally and financially in so many amazing ways.
Yeah.
And we love you so much.
We do. We really do. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for coming on this journey with us.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us the chance to speak to you. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. See you then, guys.
Bye.